And welcome back. Now we are into the home stretch of our map. The last thing that we need to do is to go ahead and create a house that we can go ahead and put in here. And of course we can add multiple houses and stuff like that, but we want at least one house here to kind of represent, hey, there's somebody that might live here. So we're going to our pixel art map resources here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go right here to this 4x4 square here to go ahead and start making in this pixel art piece. So using my marquee selection tool, let's deselect my current selection there. And I'm going to go about half of this selection here. So I want to do about 32, since it's 32 by 32, let's do 16 by 16. I got 17 by 17, so I actually need to come down one. There we go. And so once I have this selection done, we want to go ahead and fill that in with a gray. So we're going to go ahead and find a gray, do kind of more of a bluish gray today. This sounds pretty good. It doesn't have to be anything particularly too dark. That will be a good color to start. And what I want to do is make sure that selection is actually on a new layer, because I don't want to put it right on my merge layer to start, because we're going to be manipulating this around. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Oh, looks like I'm still on my pattern from last time, so make sure to go back to foreground. Fill that in. And using Control T, we're going to go ahead and actually bring this in a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that in, holding on the Shift key. Let's bring that selection in. Oh, I grabbed not the guides there. So undo. There you go. And Control T. Make sure I have the actual pieces here. Bring that in about 2 pixels on each side. Again, holding the Shift key. I want to kind of maintain that. And of course, 1 pixel up from the bottom. So if I look here and if I hit that checkbox, you can see I have about 2 pixels in on each side and 1 pixel on the bottom. So that's a nice good starting point here for our house. Now, of course, our house needs a roof. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my pencil tool here. Deselect, Control D, and bring my pencil tool on down in size. And I'm actually going to go in 1 pixel on each side to get started here. And I want to kind of try and find where is the top of this roof. And so what I can do is I can hold down the Shift key and try to get a nice straight line, which of course if I don't, it's not the end of the world. I can of course just adjust my cursor as needed. So that one wasn't quite straight, so again, you might have to play around with this just a little bit to kind of try and find where's that perfect spot for everything to effectively line up here. And you can, of course, adjust it as needed to get that line. So here, if I zoom in on this, you can see I have a roof that's moving up nice and steady there. It looks pretty good. And now that that is lined up, again, it's not going to come to a singular point here because I have even number of pixels, but I do have this nice triangular 45-degree roof. So I'm going to go ahead and use my paint bucket tool. Just go ahead and fill that region in. Make sure, of course, you bound your selection here because you don't want it to exceed that. So I'm going to go ahead and just magic wand that. Oh, quick select, there we go. And select inverse. And now if I go ahead and try to fill that in, again, helps if I restrict my bounds here. I'm just going to go ahead and restrict that. And if that paint bucket tool is giving us trouble, we can, of course, can always just switch to using our pencil tool, bring that brush size up, and fill that in fairly quickly. Alright, and there's the start to our house. Now let's assume that we are making a brick house. So to do that, we want to actually make a pattern that will make our lives a lot simpler here to fill this in rather than having to paint each individual pixel. So I'm going to go ahead and do File New, and I'm going to go ahead and choose to do, let's do a pattern that's about 12 pixels wide by maybe 4 pixels tall. And let's go ahead and create. Control 0 to zoom that on in. And you can see we have a pretty small pattern here to work with. And we are currently in that grade that we had been working with for our house. And what we actually want to do is actually take that pattern and actually go a little bit lighter. I'm actually going to go maybe almost a little bit bluish too, just to kind of add a little differentiation. The big thing is you want to make sure that there is enough color difference there that the two patterns can stand out. And that looks pretty good there. And I'm going to go ahead and make this 1 pixel wide. And I'm going to go ahead and make it about 4 pixels in width here too. Skip 1, and then let's repeat the pattern. Skip 1, repeat. Now the thing about this, if I put these end to end, we will end up with one that is 6 wide. So we may have to think about, with this case, how this ends up looking. So I'm actually going to change this a little bit here. Let's try 3, skip 1. Because now that will effectively allow that pattern to restart right here. So we do 3 and 1. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to leave a space here because I want to have this differentiated. And I'm going to go down here to the middle. I'm actually going to stagger these a little bit, because if you've ever seen bricks, they're always staggered just a little bit. And so I'm going to stagger that pattern. And then that should end right there. And so here is our brick pattern that we're going to end up working with. And so I'm going to go ahead and save this. So we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to define this as a pattern. Let's go ahead and call this brick. Click OK. And now we should be able to go back to here and define our pattern within our house. Alright, so let's go ahead and get ready to paint bucket here. Make sure we are on pattern mode. Alright, and we probably want to make sure this house is selected because we don't want to put pattern on this whole thing. And so now that this is selected, we can go ahead and use our paint bucket to go ahead and fill that in. Notice though, I accidentally put the wrong pattern on, so it's very important to make sure we grab the correct pattern. So we want our brick pattern that we just created. And when I fill that in, you should see we have this nice house pattern here now that kind of helps highlight our house. Now, the next thing I want to do is I actually want to create a border here on this house, just so it stands out a little bit nicer. So I'm actually going to use my eyedropper tool, grab the dark color that we have in here, and I'm actually going to make this just a little bit darker. So I'm actually going to bring this down a couple shades. And using my pencil tool, let's go ahead and just fill these edges in here, just to have a nice border here that's going to kind of run around this. Now, with the roof, I actually want the roof to actually be 2 here. And you'll see why eventually why we're going to do 2 here. But it's because we want the roof to be a lot more defined than, per se, the side of the building. Alright, so that's a nice good start here. Now, what good is a house without a door? So I'm going to use my rectangular marquee here to go ahead and select part of this house here. So let's just deselect real quick. And we want this, you can offset it to the side of it if you want. You can put it in the middle of your house. Either way, you want to have a selection that is a little bit taller. If you make it too wide, it's going to be kind of fat looking. You want it to be not too tall because obviously the door is not going into the second story of your house, but a nice good selection here. And again, it can be perfectly centered if you want it. You can offset a little bit. How you ever put that door there is up to you. It doesn't even have to be brown like I'm going to go ahead and make mine. You could make your door a different color if you want. But I'm going to go ahead and choose brown because I'm going to assume that this is a wooden door. And I'm going to go kind of right in the center here to start, so that looks okay. And I'm going to actually make this on a new layer, so I'm not overwriting my brick to start. And once that is there, let's go ahead and use our fill bucket tool to go ahead and fill that in. And of course, I forgot to make sure I'm on foreground, so make sure you change that. So here's the start to our door. And the next thing I want to do is go ahead and start making some of those outlines. So I'm actually going to go a little bit darker. And I'm going to switch to my pencil tool, and I'm going to go ahead and create the border of this door here just to kind of show there is a border here. And let's go ahead and add a few outlines into our door just to kind of help show some shadows of different things that might be going on. And I also want to add a even darker color than this for the bottom of the door, because this is where the shadows of the door is. So this is to show that there's things going inside. And we also want a lighter color, so I'm going to go ahead back to my original color, go lighter, maybe even a little bit into the yellows, and I can go ahead now and paint that so we have our highlight color here underneath this. Alright, now we do of course need a doorknob, so I'm actually going to go and switch to yellows here. So I'm going to go find a nice yellow that I can work with for my doorknob. And you can choose if you want a different color, you can do that. Maybe you want something that's not so brass in color. Maybe you want something a little more silver. That's up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and just stick with yellow for now. I'll go ahead and place a yellow right there for my doorknob. Now you got to remember doorknobs are also going to cast a little bit of a shadow as well. So we want to make sure that we grab this dark color again and using our pencil tool add a dark spot underneath there. Alright, and this of course is a pretty nice door to look at. but we of course need some windows here for our house. So we need to add a couple more things here for our window of our house. And you can again play around with this door as you want, but the windows are going to be very similar to what we've already seen with our house. So let's go ahead and get ready to pop a couple of those windows in here real quickly. And if you guess, well, we probably need a new layer, you're probably correct to start with a new layer to go ahead and get started here. All right, next let's grab our marquee selection tool. And I'm going to go ahead and put my window right here next to this door. And I'm going to make it kind of rectangular in shape. 5 by 6 looks pretty good. And actually, to get started with this, I actually want to use the dark color that I had been previously using here. Let's go ahead and fill that in. And next, I'm going to go ahead and switch to my pencil tool and find myself a blue color here. And I'm going to actually kind of go desaturate here a little bit to kind of show the inside of that house. Now, you could, of course, choose other colors if you want. Maybe you want a little bit lighter looking inside. But we're going to assume, let's say, nobody's home. So I'm going to go with this desaturated color here. And I'm going to go ahead and now go ahead and paint these colors in here. And of course, once you do this, you might say, oh, my window's a little too small. You can, of course, adjust the size of this selection if you ever need to, just so you can get this exactly as you need. So like I'm looking right now, and I can say, oh, my selection might be a little bit too small. That's okay. We can, of course, always adjust that selection here, just so we have a little bit more room to operate in. I think my height might be okay, but my width might be a little too small. And it's very easy then to switch back to our pencil tool and fill things in as we need to, or make any appropriate adjustments that we need to. So I'm just going to adjust this real quick. So I look here and I have windows that aren't quite even in size. That's okay, because I'm actually going to crop that down just a little bit here. And of course, if I want to adjust this later on, I can still do that. I went a little too fast there. So let me just adjust that just a little bit more here. And I can see I have nice good width here, but I have maybe too much here. But my windows also aren't tall enough. So again, my rectangular selection just needs a small adjustment here. So I might need to go just a little bit taller. Go back to my pencil tool. I can fill these regions in and very quickly and easily make the adjustments as I need to. I'm not worried about where they are in position to my house, because again, I'll be able to just simply move this over when it's all said and done. There we go. So now we have a nice square window there. And again, I can move this, so I'm just going to use my move tool to kind of just slide this over into position where I want to go. And now I want to, of course, add a little bit more detail to this. So what I'm going to do is go back to this brown here. I'm going to first choose a darker tone. And I'm going to use that just to highlight the outer edges here of this window. So anything from the top to this side here. And then I want to, on the inside of these windows here, actually go back to the original color. And I actually want to go lighter because this is where light is coming into the house. And I'm actually now going to go ahead and paint this inside region in just a little bit here. All right. All right, and you can, of course, make adjustments to your window until you get to the desired look that you want to do. Or you could even match these colors that you've done before. So, for example, I could say, I don't really want those colors. I want to actually use these same colors that I have done previously. And that's the nice thing about once you've established certain color palettes, it makes it a lot easier to kind of come through and choose what colors you actually want to use within your shapes here. So, again, I looked at this and said, oh, some of these are too dark. It's very easy for me to come and fix these and say, I want this to match with the rest of this. And so it makes it very quick, very easy to fix those up. All right. So we have a window here. And if I were to zoom this out just a little bit, of course, we can see a window here. We can even go ahead and switch to our move tool to go ahead and make a copy of that window. There we go. So now we have windows on our house. We have a door, but we need a roof here. So we need to go ahead and make that as well real quick. All right. So to make our roof, I'm actually going to go ahead and make, again, a new layer here. And let's deselect that current selection. go to our pencil tool, choose a color for our roof. Just so it's simple here, I'm going to choose kind of more of a red tone just to have it nice and stand out. And I'm going to have it extend 1 pixel past the current roof here. And I want that so it lines up with that kind of that outside border that we had previously done here. And this is again why we did 2 pixels, just so we could get that nice outside border edge there. All right, and now that that's done, I'm going to actually just go ahead and use my move tool to go ahead and create a copy of that roof here. So let me go ahead and just select that roof, and using my move tool, I'm going to go ahead and move a copy of that roof. Apparently I grabbed more than 1 layer there. So we can create a copy of that, and we're going to just extend it up just a couple pixels so it goes up into this neighboring square here just a little bit. Of course, we can move that, a little more if we want to have a longer roof. That looks pretty good there, just to kind of have it extend a little bit. And from here, we can go ahead and deselect. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil tool and I'm going to go ahead and just select this to bring these layers of the house together. So we can see very quickly our house is coming together. So I can very easily fill these in here either with my pencil tool. I can fill those in, or if you want to get selective with your brush tool, you can do that as well. But once we have this roof here filled in, the next thing we want to do is we're going to, of course, want to add a little bit of detail to it. Because if it's just this solid red mass here like we have right now, obviously that's not going to be as good looking, and it's just going to kind of look rushed and hurried. So I'm just going to quickly fill that in. And then let's get ready to do some detail. Alright, we're quickly coming to a wrap up on our house. We just need to add those textures to our roof as I mentioned, so let's go ahead and go a little bit darker here to kind of show our shadow. And the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take that, and I want to make sure that I am on that roof layer here. With my brush tool, let's go ahead and apply that to the outermost layer. And then let's go ahead and now choose a highlight color here. So we're going to choose a lighter color. And so we're kind of just alternating colors here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and alternate that lighter color on in here. And then I want to, from there, effectively repeat this pattern. So we can use our rectangular selection tool here to effectively bring this pattern and just go ahead and copy this whole thing on up. So let's use our move tool, because we can just go ahead and shift that. So we can just go ahead and do that, and we can do that like 1 pixel apart each. Or if we want to separate that out so it's a little bit wider, which we can do as well, we can do that as well. So we might want to say we want that 2 pixels apart. So I'm going to do 2 pixels here rather than 1, just because I want just a little bit more break here actually than usual. And let's do 1 more. Now you will notice as I do this, it does extend the roof here up past our original point. So one thing we do have to be careful of is as we do this is that we don't keep extending the roof. It's okay if we do it a little bit here because it helps add some cross section to our roof, which is okay. But as we get a little further up, one of the things that we may have to do is revisit some of how our roof is actually being laid on. So for this first layer, it might be okay to go ahead and do that. But you will quickly notice that we do have this roof moving with us. So this is one thing just kind of keep in mind as you're working with these patterns here. Now the simplest way to avoid this is you can, of course, easily just make this on a new layer. You could do the shadow layer on a new layer and this highlight layer on a new layer. And then you wouldn't have to worry about this whole roof coming with you. So I'm just going to go ahead real quickly do that. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process that I just showed you with using the Alt key. And then let's come back when this is all finished. Bam, just like that. There's a nice looking roof right there. Last thing we want to do with this roof is, of course, just add a little bit of shadow under the house and add a nice solid border right here with our roof. We really want to kind of have this roof effectively have a nice kind of opacity going on this side. So let's make one more layer real quick here. And we're actually going to go to black. And I'm just going to go ahead and pretty much grab this whole piece of the roof real quick here. And I want to go go ahead and fill that in. If I use the paint bucket tool, of course, you know it goes too much. So we're, again, going to stick with our pencil tool, fill this whole region in here real quick. And we're going to go ahead and change the opacity of this because, again, we don't want the one side of the roof to be black, but we want to show that there's shadow here. And this is a real quick and easy way for us to do that. It's just by putting this on and change the opacity. But I also want to, on the scene layer, show that we have light striking right here at the top. So what I'm going to actually do is kind of go to a gray and add that here. And then I'm going to actually go to almost a white and add that to this layer here. And then on that layer I just did, let's go ahead, change the opacity, and we're going to bring that down to pretty close to near 50%. Just to, again, show some nice variance in that house there. There we go. That looks pretty good here. And like I said, we need to add a shadow beneath the house. So I'm going to do one more layer. And let's stick with kind of that gray that we had previously done. And I'm just going to go ahead and box in a layer around the bottom of the house here. So I'm just going to go ahead, make sure that pencil tool looks pretty good there. Box this in. And if it goes too much, my eraser tool will come to the rescue. And once those layers are all filled in, again, take the opacity, go ahead and bring that down just a little bit to show some shadow there. And there is our house. Quick and easy. And if I were to go ahead and take these layers, let's go ahead and merge. If we were to merge them together, we can very easily go ahead and merge that down. Grab our selection tool. We can go ahead and select our house here. Copy that, bring it on over and paste that house in. And now we have a house here that we can add to our map. Look at that. Pretty neat and dandy. Now, one thing you will notice is that with this house, it is only in one direction. So we have houses, for example, that might be facing the other way. A house, for example, that might be running left to right. We didn't create that house. So I'm going to leave that as a parting challenge for you today. And that is going to wrap up everything that we need to do to go ahead and create our pixel art map.